Welcome, all pregnant families, midwives, or birth workers. This is Tracy Anderson Askew, your host for the Transform Your Birth podcast, changing your mind about birth one story at a time. Each week, we will be exploring a birth story through the lens of what birth can teach us. I'll be digging deep into each story so you can learn what it is that can change the way a birth unfolds. We can't control birth, but we can influence it. So listen in to find out how. Enjoy. Emily comes from a family who spoke very positively about birth. She then does the Transform Your Birth course, which helps her to get her mind on board and have a greater understanding of how she can manage the unpredictability of birth. She goes into spontaneous labour and she shares with us how she was able to manage the different stages and what she did with her mind. An incredible story of labour and birth, highlighting the amazing power of the hormones and the body's innate wisdom. With great support from her midwife, student midwife, partner, and her mother cheerleading, she goes on to experience the full power of her body. An inspiring story. Enjoy.
Before we begin, a note from our sponsor. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. Most of the stories you will hear through this podcast are graduates of the Transform Your Birth workshop held in Canberra. Our Transform Your Birth Today course is now available to anyone, anywhere, at any time, and includes all the wonderful wisdom of this course and live weekly catch-ups when you need it with our host, Tracy. For a little taste, please accept our pregnancy gift offer, which contains free the first few lessons and some essential wisdom for pregnancy. The link can be found in these show notes or visit transformyourbirth.com.au. And now for the episode.
Perfect.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Transform Your Birth podcast. And with me today is lovely Emily. And Emily is fresh out of the birthing room. She's only 11 days postpartum. So the fact that she can string a sentence together is pretty decent. And she had a beautiful little boy called Eden. So welcome, Em, to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Now, when you were pregnant, how were you feeling about the prospect of giving birth? And tell us about your preparation.
So I was a little nervous about giving birth. Overall, throughout my pregnancy, I actually felt a lot better than I expected that I would. Throughout my family, we've had lots of people that have had really bad morning sickness. So I was sort of bracing myself for the worst and getting ready to try and balance, morning sickness with busy life. But thankfully, I was totally fine throughout the whole pregnancy, which was a really nice surprise. So I had a really positive pregnancy, and everything sort of tracked along exactly as it should have been. I did get gestational diabetes towards the end, got diagnosed with that one. But fortunately, I was able to keep everything under control just through diet management, and only had a couple of small spikes. So it didn't end up impacting my birth at all, which I was really grateful for, because I was a little worried about, how that might mean that we might need to be induced early or that might have ramifications. But yeah, fortunately, I was able to be treated as someone without gestational diabetes, just due to how we could manage that.
Yeah.
And then, in terms of preparation, I just really dived into listening to lots of podcasts. I listened to lots of birth stories just to sort of familiarize myself with birth. It wasn't something I'd really obviously been exposed to before as a first-time mum. I spent a lot of time talking to my mum about her births. I'm from a family of 3, and she had really positive experiences birthing all of us. So I feel like that had a massive impact on my mindset towards birth.
I might come in there, Em. The way our parents talk to us about birth, our sisters, our aunties, can have a huge impact, particularly when there's that genetic connection to them, and how your mother gives birth can have the implication can be, this is how it's going to be for you. And whilst there can be certain patterning set up in the minds and in our minds and the way we learn to think about birth, every birth is very, very different, and it's not something you should ever compare your birth to other people in your family, but it's hard to avoid that. But you certainly had a benefit with your mum talking about birth in a positive way. So when you were pregnant, were you scared to give birth?
I felt not scared as such. I think I was a little bit excited to experience it, but I was definitely nervous because it feels like you're walking into this territory that you just don't know. And I think that's actually the scariest bit, is not knowing what to expect or what it's really going to be like. And obviously people try and explain it to you, but it's hard to even imagine what a contraction would feel like or what the whole process feels like. And also I think the fear of the unknown was probably the scariest aspect. And I felt more confident by just listening to other women's stories and trying to just build my sense of what to expect as much as possible. So I think towards the very end, I started to feel, I'd say, more nervous. I didn't feel scared as such.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So what other preparation did you do?
So then, obviously did your course, Transform Parenting. So we came and did the weekend session with you, which was really helpful. And I feel like, that was hugely impactful in just equipping ourselves with knowledge about obviously the process, the different stages of labor, but then also the coping mechanisms and the tools that we can use at each stage as well. That was really helpful.
That's good. And hopefully useful on the day. So let's talk about the big day. How did it unfold?
So we were a couple of days overdue, only I think 3, which I know, something you say is try and imagine that you've got that birth month as opposed to getting stuck on a certain day. But it is so hard when you're, past that date and you're getting a bit antsy and you're thinking, when's this baby coming? We were sort of hanging at home and getting a bit antsy because it's like you don't really want to make plans for anything too much, but then you're just in this limbo. So I found myself just wanting to find distractions to keep busy, just to sort of take my mind off it a little bit. So I was feeling a bit antsy in the morning. So we thought, let's try and get out of the house, just distract ourselves, keep busy. So we decided to make plans to go look around the gallery, and then go and play some mini golf, because we thought that's good. We're being active and walking around, but we're distracting ourselves. We're not just sort of sitting at home waiting for this baby to come. So we got ourselves all ready. We were just about to go to the gallery, and I started getting really, really subtle sort of period pain, that sort of just came and then went away. And I thought, oh, is this something, not really sure, feels like it could be, but who knows how long that sort of symptom might be around for. It was so light at that point. So we thought, let's go to the gallery because that'll be good, distraction. Even if it is sort of starting, it might not be a while until things really sort of kick in. So we went to the National Gallery, we started walking around, and as we were walking around the different rooms, I just kept feeling this sort of period pain that was coming and then going and then coming and then going. And I sort of started to clock, hang on a minute, I think this was about 1:30, 2 o'clock-ish in the afternoon. I'd been in one of the gallery rooms, and I noticed that there'd been 3 of those period type pains since I'd been in there. I was thinking, oh, we couldn't have been in this one space for this long. Like, maybe something's starting to really happen here. And I said to my husband, oh, hang on, have you already booked the mini golf? Because what happens if, this does progress quite quickly and we don't make it? And he's like, oh, I've paid for it, but, it doesn't matter. We don't have to go. But I thought, okay, we'll see how we go. And we're sort of walking around the gallery, and I was totally fine, just felt this sort of period pain coming and going. But then, I noticed that it was sort of staying quite consistent at sort of like 3 and 10 minutes sort of timing, which I was thinking, I don't know, it seems kind of quick, but I felt physically fine and I wasn't in any pain as such. It was very manageable. And I was thinking, we'll just see what happens. We'll keep pressing on. Then we went to the mini golf, which I think was booked around 3:30. So we went into the city. And by this point, it was no question, it was definitely coming. I could feel the period type pain sort of coming and going. But again, it was still really manageable at this point. It felt fine for me to keep sort of walking around. But then I think once we checked in, we started hitting the first hole and then the second hole. And then we got to the third hole. I think we'd only been at the place for like 10 minutes or so. And there were kids climbing all over this mini golf hole that we were supposed to be using, and there was disco lights flashing and there was music really loud. It was like being at a disco. And just, I think it was peak school holidays, so there were just kids going nuts everywhere. And I just had this moment where my brain was just not even computing what I could do in this situation. Usually I'd be so fine to just, we'll just wait for the kids to finish, or we'll just say, hey, little ones, like, do you mind if we have a go? Or, I usually have some sort of way of handling that situation. But I was just almost there frozen, just being like, my brain can't even compute what to do right now.
Interesting.
And I thought, oh gosh, I think we need to go. I don't think I can be in this really intense environment right now. So we decided to leave mini golf after 2 holes. The lady who checked us in was so sweet. She was like, I'll have some passes to come back later. So that was really sweet. And then we drove home, and on the way home, I was again just tracking how quickly this pain was coming. And at this point, it was, sort of sticking to that sort of rhythm, I suppose, but it felt like it was picking up in intensity a little bit. So all I wanted to do was just get home, be in the quiet, and bounce on a birth ball. That was just all I wanted to do. So we got home, we did that. I started bouncing on the birth ball in the lounge room, and just my husband suggested putting on just a reality show just to relax and just, distract myself in a more relaxing way, I suppose. And we put on this reality show, and I just couldn't even listen to the voices on the show. So I just had it on and I just put it on mute straight away. And I was like, I can't even listen to this right now, which is a surprise because I love my reality TV. So we thought that would be a nice comfort, but just couldn't even listen to it. And
I love what Emily's describing there is we call it going into labor land, into the zone. You go from being as normal as you can for as long as you can, which you did beautifully. But then there comes a point, and I suspect it happened at golf, where you were just like, I cannot think anymore. And to think is irritating. And then what that means is any stimulation around you is very irritating. And so ideally what we want at that point is for the mother to be able to go inward. And she can only go inward if her environment and the people around her cause her to feel safe, protected, and able to let go. And so that's why labouring at home is really good, because that is where you feel safe, and staying there as long as you can is really good. But being caught out in on a mini golf course with a whole bunch of kids, we had Nat on the podcast once. She was swimming in a big pool, and she's in labour, and she just got caught there and ended up needing an ambulance. And that was funny to get her to hospital because her labour progressed really quickly. But that change in state where you can just kind of, you feel those sensations, and then everything just goes offline. Really interesting.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, just not being able to think in that moment was really weird to me, because it would usually be such a straightforward situation to deal with. But my brain was not computing.
No.
But so once we realized that, oh my gosh, I can't even listen to the voices of this reality show, we thought, okay, let's really, start prepping the space and making it really calm. So my husband just kicked into gear without even really me saying anything, which was fantastic. He put all the blinds down, he put candles around the room, and he put on some really relaxing music, which was really nice. He turned off the reality show, and he put on like these nature scenes on the TV that were just scenes of deserts and rainforests and ice tundras and oceans and things like that, which was just perfect. And then I think he remembered your advice, Tracy, which was to try and hydrate and eat in early labor. So he tried to feed me some soup. But at this point, I felt a little bit nauseous, but I thought I'll try and eat it because, who knows how long we're going to be in this for. I need some sustenance. So I had a little bit of soup, but I did kind of regret it because I felt really nauseous at the time. But I did manage to get it down. And then I sort of built myself almost like a little pillow tower on top of the couch, so I could be behind the couch on the birth ball and then leaning forward into this tower of pillows. But what was very cute was my dog, who is just a little prince, of course, thought this tower was for him. So he just climbed straight on top. But it was very cute because he was just right there with me every time I had a contraction. I was
Oh,
sort of leaning into this pillow and he was just sort of there with me, which was really cute.
oh,
Um, so I was sort of at home in this spot next to the couch for, I think from about 4-ish, 4:30 when we got home, um, through to about 6:30. And during that time, things definitely got more intense. I was starting to really just breathe through contractions and just really go inward, like you said, Tracy, just kind of talking myself through each one internally, I suppose, and noticing as they sort of peak and then come back down, and then yeah, just really just focusing on just getting through them one at a time. And then I think maybe around 5:30-ish, they started to feel quite intense. So I suggested that we put on the TENS machine, which we had hired prior to the birth. And as soon as I put that on, it was just immediate relief. It was amazing. I was like,
wow.
oh my gosh, this thing is the best. It just took so much intensity out of each contraction. So basically I had it so that it sort of is pulsing my back all the time.
Yeah.
And then you press the boost button when the contraction comes in. And it just took so much intensity out of the contractions. It made them feel so much more manageable.
Yeah.
So I was really grateful that I had organized that.
Oh, that's interesting. It's always a bit of a mystery, the TENS machine, as to whether it's going to make a difference or not. But why do you think it made a difference? Do you have any insight in that?
It just felt like, well, I know the way that it works is it almost like scrambles the pain signals in your brain. So yeah, I'm not sure of the exact science of it, but I just know that whenever I pressed that boost button, it did just make the contraction feel a lot more manageable to me somehow. I could still feel it all happening, but it did feel less painful somehow.
Interesting.
So the contraction that I had as soon as I put that on, it just felt less intense, I suppose, than the ones that I'd been having prior. And it felt like a relief at that point to put the machine on. Yeah.
Fantastic. Can you
Which was
tell
good.
us, Emily, what your contractions felt like?
It
How would you
did feel,
describe them?
so obviously it started as what felt like light period pain, but it felt different in that it just comes and then it's gone, and then you're totally fine again in between, which is such a strange feeling because obviously with period pain it's more constant. But then with these ones, as they sort of picked up in intensity, I would say I could feel it more, not just through my stomach and also through my back, through my tailbone, and it almost feels like this pain that's building and then intensifies in this kind of tightness, and then it just kind of dissolves out slowly as well. So it's not like it's immediately this intensity the whole time. You're sort of building up to it and you have time to almost mentally prepare for it, I think, as well. So a lot of what I was trying to do was go, okay, here we go, let's breathe, through it. And then it's like, cool, we've got through that one. And then almost just trying to take it one at a time was the tactic I was trying to go through in my mind.
Are you aware of what you were doing with your mind?
I was, in that I was trying to just focus on breathing, I suppose. And I found your advice about breathing really helpful. Just normal nose breathing was good. But I did focus on trying to slow my breath down, and in my mindset, just not almost get carried away by the thought of what's to come, but just focusing on just that moment and just trying to get through each one. And it actually felt totally manageable to me at that point. I wasn't scared. I wasn't worried about anything. I was just sort of getting in the zone of just dealing with each one, and it felt pretty fine. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you were still at home. You put the TENS machine on. That was a wonderful relief. Then you must have felt the need to go to hospital. When did that happen?
Yeah. So I started thinking, okay, we're gonna have to probably get going soon. So my husband was running around packing the hospital bag. We had it packed, but just the last minute things to grab. And then at the same time, he was also doing hip counter pressure every time I had a contraction as well, which again felt really good. So those pressure points on the hips, which I think you showed us in the course, Tracy. But because the contractions are coming quite quickly, he was sort of running to put something in the bag, running back to was running to put another thing in the bag, grabbing the toothbrush, running back. So he was sort of running around the house, quite quickly.
Working hard.
And then we realized, and in the meantime, we were texting the midwives as well, because I was part of the continuity program at North Canberra. We were texting my continuity midwife, and we also had a student midwife as well. So we had a group text where I was sort of updating them throughout the afternoon as well. And then we were updating them as the contraction timings got closer and longer. And the good thing about the TENS machine as well is it also records your contraction timings as well. So I could see how long they were, and I could see how far apart they were. And so it was a really accurate measure to know when to go in. But I also felt like I just knew when I needed to go in as well, just in my soul.
Tell us about that. Say more about how did you know you needed to go? What was the shift?
I just felt like when they were getting really close, and I was thinking, how are we going to get there?
That's the one. That's the sign. I always say to people, go when you don't think you can do the car trip. It's that feeling of I'm very happy to be here, and then it's like, oh, I don't think I can go anywhere.
Yeah. I felt like it was our moment to go before it got to that point where we couldn't leave almost, because I could feel how quickly they were building, and I was thinking, oh gosh, I think now's the golden moment to go before, if things keep progressing as they are. I think if we left it any later, we would have had a very tough time trying to get there. So we called the midwife, and I think things probably progressed quicker than maybe she was expecting as well, but she listened to me over the phone, have maybe 2 contractions. And I think originally the plan was going to be that she would come to our house to, sort of support us there and then assess if we should go into the hospital. But when she listened to me on the phone, I think this was at 6:30, she said, okay, let's make a plan to meet at the hospital at 7, and we'll meet you there. I thought, okay, that must mean she's pretty confident things are happening. So we got into the car. We kind of timed it that I could have a contraction, then walk down to the car, sort of have a contraction in the car. We also planned to take our car that had the best heated seats, which was a godsend. Nice. Very glad I made that decision, because as soon as I sat on this heated seat, it was just heaven on my back. And it made the car trip so much more bearable. So I'd say that would be a hot tip if you've got heated car seats.
Choose that car.
Choose that car. We put the car seat, like the baby capsule, in the other car strategically so that we could take that car and I could have the seat reclined. But fortunately, we're only a 6-minute drive from the hospital as well. So we knew it would be a pretty quick and easy trip. So we got in the car. I think I had maybe 2 or 3 contractions in the car. And again, just had that TENS machine on, still had the heated seats on. So it wasn't too bad, that car trip, thankfully. We got a park out the front of the hospital. And again, we just timed it so that I could have a contraction in the car, then we could get up and go. One thing I was a little bit nervous about is at North Canberra Hospital, you've got to walk through emergency to get to the maternity, to the birth centre. So I was a little worried about walking through emergency and just seeing something that might, I don't know, freak me out or throw me out of labour land a little bit. So I was really not wanting to have a contraction in that emergency department room. And I also just didn't want to see anything. So I kind of we tried to quickly walk through, and I just tried to not even take in the surroundings there. And we just focused on walking straight through. And then we got up the stairs, had one at the top of the stairs, which was good. We made it. And then we walked down the corridor, had another one at the other end of the corridor, met the midwife, had a contraction just as well as meeting the midwife. So I think things were definitely, progressing quickly at this point. I think we really went to the hospital at the right time.
If you go to the hospital too early, it's more likely to stall your labour. And it's natural for that to happen because you're in a different environment. There's probably going to be more adrenaline in your system, and adrenaline counteracts oxytocin. So Em seemed to really, like, you absolutely nailed when to go, because you're probably getting close to transition, which means that it's less likely to stall. your labour because you were still having those strong contractions. But if it does happen where you go in and your contractions ease off or slow down, don't worry, they'll come back. It's just that change in environment that can cause that to happen. So what happened? You got into the room. I bet the midwife had a good sense that you were well and on the way.
Yeah, I know. I was expecting to have a check or something at that point, but she felt so confident everything was fine, so no checks necessary. So I saw that they had a birth ball. I still had the TENS machine on. I thought, great, I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing at home, but just do that at hospital. So I did that. I think we got to hospital about 7:30 in the end because we were taking ourselves quite carefully and timing everything strategically. And then I also had my mum attend as well. So
wow,
my mum got there, I think we got there about 7:30. Mum got there about 8. And my mum walked into the room and she's going, hey, how you going? Like, how's everything progressing? And I just went, shh.
She didn't read the vibe. Or she would have
like,
eventually. She was probably so excited.
I felt bad about it. I don't think she realized how far along we were.
Yeah.
And I
Interesting.
think I was mid-contraction or something when she walked in. So I think, it took her a second to orientate herself to just realize, hang on, we're up to here.
Yeah.
So that was pretty funny. But then eventually I got to the point where I felt like I was really needing some other kind of tool, I suppose. The TENS machine was fantastic. I was a little bit scared to take it off, but I also felt like I wanted to try something new. And the midwife had filled up a bath, so she suggested that I get in the bath. And I knew from your course, Tracy, that you want to make sure you get in the bath at the right time, otherwise it can slow things down. So I think in my mind, even though the contractions were coming, at a really good pace, I think I was still worried that I was going to stall this labor and slow things down. So I said to the midwife, are you sure it's okay for me to get in the bath? Like, do you need to check anything before I get in? Do I need to, am I going to slow things down? And I think she just looked at me and she goes, look, I don't think you're going to slow anything down at this point. I think you can get in. I think you'll be fine.
I love the Emily's come in and the midwife just needed to look at her to know where she was up to in her labour, and a good midwife can do that. But often what will happen when you come in is your carers are potentially going to want to do what's called a vaginal examination, which requires you to get up on the bed and then they put their fingers in your vagina to find out what's going on with the cervix, how open it is. And a lot of health professionals feel that that's a necessary part of monitoring. However, it isn't a medical necessity. And this is a great example of the midwife just trusting, absolutely trusting what she was seeing through Emily and working accordingly. So it's not necessary to check your cervix because a good midwife can tell where you're up to, unless there's another reason. So prior to labour, during your antenatal visits, a great question to ask your carers is, under what conditions would you want to do a vaginal examination? So you can understand what the ground rules are where you're birthing, and you can then know and understand, that most of the time you won't need one. So I love that, she's confident enough to say, no, we're good. You can hop in the bath. So when you hopped in the bath, what was that like, Em?
As soon as I got in the bath, I think I just went, oh my goodness, this feels so good. I was thinking, why did I worry about getting in this bath earlier? This is so nice. It just felt like immediate relief just across my whole body. The warmth just felt amazing. And I was thinking, oh, okay, this feels like it's really manageable again now. So I just kind of enjoyed being in the bath for, I think it was about 8:45-ish that I got in. And then I was just breathing through each contraction in the bath. My husband and my mum were both sort of alternating between giving me those hip squeezes because by this point they'd just become essential for each contraction. So they were sort of getting themselves a bit wet in the bath trying to help me with that. But that was great. So they were sort of alternating, tag teaming between doing those. And yeah, I think I was pretty fine just dealing with each contraction. Obviously, they were getting longer and more intense while I was in the bath. And I could sort of feel like more pressure sort of building with each one as well. But I think I got to about 9:30ish. And as a bit of a side note, prior to me like going into labor a few weeks earlier, I had some genetic sequencing done, and I realized that I actually have this thing within my genes, basically, which means there is a risk that if I have too much gas, my body can react quite badly to it. So I was a little nervous about having too much gas. I think I discussed it with doctors and everything at the time. And they said, it's fine to have a little bit. Let's just not overload you and have you on it for, 6 hours or, a really long time. So as part of my birth plan, I had that I was happy to try a little bit of gas, but I just didn't want to be on it for a really long time. And my midwife knew that as well. And we had a bit of a game plan for it. But I think I got to about 9:30 and I said, okay, I think I really need something else now. Not sure what needs something. I think I need the gas. Just felt like I needed some sort of level up of support. And my midwife was sort of going, yep, no worries. And then just sort of not doing anything. She was trying to hold me off as long as she could, which was very clever and strategic on her part. And I think I asked for it a couple of times. And then my mum goes, okay, we need this gas. I don't think she realized what the midwife was trying to do strategically, holding me off it a little bit. But then in the end, I think she gave me a quick lesson on how to use the gas. And I had that, which again provided that sort of next level of relief, which was fantastic. So I was just breathing in a breath at the start of each contraction. And again, it just made those contractions feel so much more manageable. So that was fantastic. And then I think as things progressed, I'm not even sure what time it would have been, maybe somewhere between 9:30 and 10ish. And I realize now on reflection, this would have been definitely going through transition. But I just felt like I really needed that verbal encouragement from my mom and from my husband. And this is where my mom was fantastic. She's just such a cheerleader, so she just, I'm not even sure what she was saying, but she said all of the right things that just made me feel really supported throughout that time.
Wow.
And I also tried to really communicate with both of them as well, just to say what I felt I needed as well. It was very hard to talk at this point, but there was one point, for example, where my mum was sort of saying, okay, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, but it wasn't in timing with my breaths, and it was sort of frustrating. So I think I just said, that's not helping. And so she sort of backed off from the verbal encouragement for a little bit. And then I was like, no, I need more encouragement. Like keep talking to me. And mum just took the assignment and ran with it. And she just said all sorts of things, just to help me mentally get through it, which was one thing I didn't realize was, I guess, how much of a mental game birth is, as much as it is a physical game.
Such a powerful comment right there. And that encouragement, being surrounded by people who can hold space and be okay with the fact that you are hitting that, well, I call it the cracking of the shell from the woman into the mother. It can be very distressing for people around you who love you, seeing you in that state. And if they have that frame of, this is not right, fix her, give her this, give her that, that by its nature sends a powerful message to the birthing mother that you're not coping. But if you've got someone around you who's seeing you struggle, who's giving you those right messages, then your mind runs with that and continues supporting you to work with the birth. So that messaging that you've just shared with us is so very powerful in helping women to overcome the hump, because they're so in it. They don't know that they can get through it, but they can't get off the bus. And the very fact that they can't get off the bus means that they can get through it because they have to. Like there's no way out, only through. And if we can hold the space for women to push through that, that struggle, that, cracking of the shell, I want to get off the bus, but I can't, I've got to push through. That's where the gold is. That's where that Mother Nature's plan for you is, for you to realize that you're much bigger than what you think you are. And she wants you to be ready for that next phase of being able to rise up and meet the needs of a very high, newborn who has very high needs. So the struggle is of great value and great benefit, but we need to be surrounded by people who are comfortable in that. And bless your mother and your partner. Your partner was all well versed in this, and your mother took the cues and gave you exactly what you needed. Aren't they wonderful? That's great.
Yeah, I felt so lucky because I do feel like that verbal encouragement was just really, really key throughout that time. And it just helped me stay really focused. And I think on that note that you mentioned about seeing, someone you love in pain, I think I sort of reflected on it with my husband in the days following, and he said that, it's not like you're watching someone being tortured in front of you. It's not like that. It's this sort of, you've got this purpose. And he said that when you when he looked at my face throughout the process of labor, he could just see that I was really focused, really determined. And it's a very different kind of facial expression that you might have when you're in that sort of focused, determined labor zone, as opposed to just being tortured in pain, I suppose. So he didn't feel like he was worried watching me in that scenario, I suppose.
And so some women, not all women, are as focused and in that determined mindset. You'd done the training, you'd done the practice, and you knew you had the underpinnings of why what you were doing was very important and of great benefit. Not every woman has that understanding. And so even in those circumstances, she still has to struggle, and she might make pretty primal, like hard to listen to type sounds. They're not sounds you hear every day. And that can be much harder to hold when you can see that the birthing woman is really, really struggling. But it's that belief that she can do this that can help tether you to your ability to be around the struggle and hold space for it to happen.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also something I didn't realize until after the birth, which was pretty cool, was that my dad actually was outside the room the entire time, so he could hear everything. And I was reflecting on it with my midwife later, and she said that, for him, just hearing the noises would have probably sounded a bit confronting. And so she was sort of giving him this reassurance that, no, she's fine. This is the sound of a woman who's in good labor that's, doing really well. But I think his experience of just hearing it would have been really different to my husband's experience of being in there and seeing my face and seeing that I was fine. So
Good insight.
Definitely
very true.
Interesting. But so then I started to feel a little bit pushy. I think it would have been somewhere after 10 o'clock. And at this point, the midwife suggested kindly, how about we try some contractions without the gas, just so you can sort of feel what your body's doing. And I think at this point, I was so dependent on this gas that I just said, no, I don't want to, I need this. And everyone goes, okay, we don't blame you, we understand. So they didn't take it off me. But what my midwife told me later, which again, I didn't realize, is that she actually turned the gas really down. So I was just basically breathing oxygen at this point, but I didn't know.
And that's called placebo. When you think something's working, it's working.
Which is funny, but I think
she's a trickster.
Yeah. She obviously didn't want me to be on the gas for long periods because of my birth plan of just the risks of me being on it for too long.
And also because it does disassociate the mother right at the time when she's about to meet her baby. So, the disassociation that can come from the gas or morphine isn't really an ideal state. And it can also give you, a dry mouth, and it has its impacts. But obviously, it was helping you. That piece of plastic between your teeth was helping you.
Yeah, I think so. But she wanted me to really be in tune with my body and really feel what was happening.
So wise
for that stage. So that was a very clever move on her part, I think. Because that placebo effect was real. I had no idea at the time. And I wouldn't have probably been able to, I don't know if I could have told the difference or not, but I had no context to know what it was going to feel like with or without gas anyway.
Yeah.
But so at that point, the midwife Alana came over, and she was sort of right next to me. My mum and my husband were right next to me as well. And they've sort of, my midwife was just sort of coaching me, saying, just listen to your body, go with what your body's trying to tell you to do. And I think at this point as well, I was also thinking, oh, do I need a check before I can start pushing? But yeah, she was very confident to just go, no, you can go for it. She could see with the mirror, everything was good to go. So she sort of said, just listen to your body, follow what your body is trying to tell you to do. And I feel like that almost gave me this, permission to then just push and go with my body.
Yeah.
I think I definitely felt that ring of fire happening. And a little bit of a blur, but I think it might have actually been just before this that she could sort of put the torch in the mirror down and see what was happening, and she could see that the head was there. And she goes, oh, I think we can see a head. And they were encouraging me to reach down and touch the head. And even though I could touch the head and they were telling me the head was there, I think in my mind I was still thinking I had so much further to go. I was thinking we were going to be here for hours and hours. So I just in my soul didn't believe that the head was there, which sounds really weird because I touched it and I still just didn't believe that was my baby's head that was there. And then it wasn't until a couple of minutes later, I think my mum said, oh, he's got brown hair. I went, oh my gosh, she can see the head. The head is there. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, she wouldn't make that up. So she said, as soon as she said that, she could see this look of determination just come across my face. Like something switched, and she went, okay, yep, let's get this baby out. So then, yeah, I started listening to my body, and every time I could feel that sort of contraction and that urge to push, I just sort of supported that and pushed with it actively. And then I think it was only 3 to 4 pushes. Yeah, our baby was born at about 10:26, I think it was, to be exact. And yeah, he just sort of came down into the water, and straight away he was just so calm and alert, and just you could just see straight away he was just there. He looked like the healthiest baby. I had no concerns that there was anything to worry about. He took a second to cry, and then he just did this cute little cry and then a little sneeze. And then they put him on my chest, and it was amazing. He was he came out very calm, very with it, I suppose. He was very alert. And he just looked strong and healthy, like this healthy newborn from the second that he was born, which was just amazing. Yeah.
How was that feeling to meet him for the first time?
Oh, it was amazing. I was trying to sort of consciously track, because there's so many emotions that you're holding at the same time in such a short moment. I remember just feeling this overwhelming sense of relief that, my baby, I could just tell he was healthy and fine, and he looked so cute. And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, this is just the best feeling ever. So there was this just kind of excitement and relief about meeting him. There was a sense of accomplishment of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that. That was like just this amazement at my body, and the fact that I got through it and it was fine, and it was better than I thought it was going to be in my mind. So it was this sense of huge accomplishment at the time as well. And then I think also just the physical relief that, the pain just sort of dissipates straight away. All that pressure dissipates as soon as he's out, and I felt physically fine and really quite good. So I think, yeah, there were lots of emotions sort of all at the same time, lots of thoughts overlapping. But it's a very overwhelming moment at the same time as well, because you've obviously just got through this huge physical feat. And then you're meeting your baby, and yeah, it's a very special moment for sure.
And how was the placenta, the birth of the placenta?
So we snuggled in the bath for a little bit, and then I just felt so fine. I got myself up and out of the bath myself, which again, I was so surprised that I could just get up and hoist myself out of this huge bath, like pretty much unaided. I felt physically really good. Walked over to the hospital bed, and we snuggled in there for a while. Originally, my plan was to have I think it's the Pitocin injection, just because it reduces the risk of hemorrhaging, and I was a little bit worried about hemorrhaging. So I thought it would be a good idea for me to have that. But in the moment, I think my husband and the midwife were discussing it, and they were both very aware of my wishes as well. And they went, "How about we'll just wait and just see what happens for 40 minutes or so, and then if nothing's happening, then we can do the injection." And yeah, the midwife supported me. Unfortunately, she just sort of guided me through doing some really gentle pushing, and the placenta came out perfectly on its own and was entirely intact, which was fantastic. So I didn't end up having the injection. It was a physiological third stage, which was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then you had a little bit of a tear. Tell us a little bit about that experience, because often tearing is one of women's biggest fears. And you discovered that it wasn't so bad. Is that right?
Yeah, I had no idea that I'd torn. I thought I'd gotten through this birth and I was physically fine, and I honestly couldn't believe it because I felt great. I had no idea at all, which, you think that if you did tear that you would feel it afterwards, or that you'd be aware of it. But I had no idea that I'd torn at all. So after the placenta delivery, the midwife, while I was cuddling Eden on my chest, she had a look just to sort of suss out what the situation was, and then she could tell there was a tear. So she thought she'd get a doctor up to come and have a better look, and just work out a bit of a game plan. So she called up a doctor, and they had a good look. To be honest, that was probably my least favorite part of the whole birth, which is crazy to think about, because you'd think that actually pushing the baby out would be the most, I don't know, well, it was intense, but maybe the more painful or unpleasant part. But I actually think this part was the most unpleasant, where the doctor was sort of inspecting and having a look at what the tear was like. And so, they had a look, and it also changed the vibe a little bit at that point as well, because I think being in the continuity program and with the midwives, they have such a sort of caring, holistic approach, whereas the doctor that came in brought more of a clinical kind of approach. It felt a little bit more, I guess the way you could describe it is clinical, as opposed to the midwife kind of warmth, caring approach. So that part I didn't enjoy as much, but obviously they've got their job to do. And then she realized that the tear was a 3B, which is a pretty bad one. And then, they just gave me advice on what to do from there. And the advice was that the best thing would be to go down to theatre to have it properly repaired, just to make sure it's all done correctly. And they also gave me the option of having a spinal or having general anaesthetic to have that repaired. And at the time, I felt like I just had this most magical, amazing birth. I didn't want to always have the memories of that repair fused with my birth in a way. So I thought the best plan for me would be to go under general anesthetic and then not be aware of what they were doing at the time. I didn't want to let it tarnish my birth experience. So I decided to go into general anesthetic, and then in the meantime we just had cuddles upstairs while they were preparing the theatre. And then my husband was having skin to skin with the baby, and I could just see that they were all fine, and the baby was all super calm, and that made me feel quite comfortable to be able to leave to go down to theatre. And then we went down, and the anaesthetist team was so lovely and looked after me really well. And then obviously I don't remember the surgery at all. I just woke up afterwards, and they sort of told me what they'd done, and it was all good. And then I got wheeled up to the postnatal where I could have some more snuggles with baby. So
nice.
That was all good.
There you go. Wow. So Emily's birth is a beautiful example, once again, of Mother Nature's blueprint of the design, where we can optimize women's response to birth by being well supported, having people around who can hold that space, having a beautiful environment and carers that are sensitive to the emotional state of the mother, that listening to your body and observing just how your body knows how to birth and has all of the reflexes, hormonal release, the mechanics and the forces inside to help get these babies here into this world. And being able to work with that, not against it, comes with a bit of preparation for both the birthing mother and the people around her partner. And in your case, you had your lovely mother and a doula and a student midwife, which is like a doula, and a continuity midwife. So you had the perfect conditions, Emily, for little Eden to be born, and you're able to really milk that Mother Nature's blueprint. Is there anything else you want to say to end us off today?
No, I think, the main message would just be that for me, birth was better than I expected, which was a really nice surprise. I actually, think of it really fondly, and I'm really grateful that I had that experience, and also that I'm really grateful for your course as well, Tracy, because I do feel like that prepared me so much. And I remember even thinking, I think it could have even been when I was being wheeled down to theatre, I'm so glad I did Tracy's course, because I do feel like all the knowledge that we gained there was really helpful, and I felt really calm and in control the whole time, because I do feel like I could understand what was happening in my body at every step. So so thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is why I never get sick of doing this work, when we can set up those conditions and with a bit of preparation, getting the mind on board and getting partners active and really useful in that space is really powerful. So a big thank you to Emily and her lovely family for sharing this beautiful story with us today. And tune in again next week for some more goodness. Have a good week. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and share this podcast. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. It is a place where you can learn, get support